Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today we're going to be talking about my best tips on how to read more. I know it's kind of crazy to hear me and probably a lot of other bookish creators reading upwards of 200 books a year. I think the statistic is like the average person reads less than one book a year. However, I do think that that is changing. As much as I love to rag on Book Talk and their recommendations and the lifestyle girlies and all of that, no matter how flawed that stuff is, it is really great that Book Talk and bookish social media has really inspired a resurgence of readers, especially young readers. I love seeing that. And if you're just getting into reading, or if you've been into reading for a while and you're wondering, how can I read as much as these bookish content creators? I am gonna tell you all of my secrets. I have 20 tips for you. And these are not just like basic little tips. No, I'm gonna bring you the real tea. And it is nothing that has to do with me being a creator. I didn't want to give any advice that came from, oh, well, this is how I read more because I'm a creator, so I am able to read more. No. These are tips that can apply to anyone, whether you make bookish content or not. So stay tuned for that. But before we get into it, I do want to let you know about the sponsor of today's video, which is Dossier. Y'all know I absolutely love Dossier perfumes. They make some absolutely gorgeous, high quality scents without the markup, but with all of the same benefits of your favorite perfume that you lust after every time you go into Sephora. For example, this is their scent Ambery Cherry, and it smells exactly like Tom Ford's Lost Cherry, but it does not have the same price tag. Dossier scents are down to like $29 for this massive bottle, and when I tell you it has the same designer quality, it stays on my skin, it doesn't irritate my skin, I get tons of compliments on it. I would much rather buy Dossier and save some coin than going to these overpriced perfume brands. And it also allows you to buy a lot more scents. Like, I like to have seasonal scents. When you think about buying 4 perfumes for the year, that's a lot if you're paying full price. But with Dossier, that is much more affordable. They also have a lot more than luxury inspired perfumes on their site. They have their own original scents, which I love. They have candles, and they actually have room diffusers as well. This one is the Woody Sandalwood scent, and I actually have one of these in every other room in my house. So my entire house smells exactly like Santal 33, and every time people come into my house, they ask me, why does it smell like a hotel in here? Why does it smell like a fancy hotel? And this is literally my secret. It's these reed diffusers from Dossier that smell like a luxury scent, but are much more affordable. So if you want to check out Dossier, go ahead and click my link down below. They're always running sales, and it's very affordable to begin with. I genuinely love the products. Thank you so much to Dossier for sponsoring a portion of this video. And now let's go ahead and get into the tips. My biggest advice, just right at the top, I feel like this is a weird niche thing that maybe started from me making videos, but it has helped me read so much. And when I tell my friends to do this, it's helped them read a lot more as well. And that is schedule your reading time. Literally write it in your planner when you see a free day or a couple free hours in your workday. I'm gonna read during this time from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock when I don't have any meetings. I'm gonna read. Or if you have a free Saturday, make that your reading day for the week. Once you schedule it in and it feels more like an obligation, I just feel like it's easier to justify. For me, before I started making videos, it was really difficult for me to justify spending a lot of leisure time reading. I would kind of shame myself and say like, oh no, I've already been sitting around for this many hours today, like I should really get up and do something. Or, oh, I should really be seeing seeing my friends, or I should be working, or something like that. There's just a lot of pressure in general in our society around self-care and taking personal leisure time. So I found that scheduling it out kind of gives me a justification for doing that, because it's an obligation. It's on my to-do list, it's in my planner, so I treat it like everything else in my planner. And I think if you want to do a little bit more with that, take it a little bit further, you can even delve into like your personal stuff, whether it's like mental, emotional blocks about why it's hard for you to give yourself self-care or to allow yourself to sit down and read without scheduling it out. I've done some of that work with my therapist, and I've done some of that work with some of my clients in my practice, and it's really interesting where some of those self-imposed beliefs come from. And once you start to break through them, it is so much easier to not only see the time that you have to read, but also let yourself take advantage of it. So I know that's kind of like maybe a little bit woo-woo for the first tip, but that is truly my biggest advice. And when you're in your scheduled reading time, I think a really helpful thing on top of that is to attend reading sprints or set a timer for yourself if you're not a fan of like public reading sprints. I know there are a ton of channels that do weekly, monthly, whatever reading sprints on YouTube. I know there are a ton of Patreons, including my own, that do reading sprints every other week or sometimes every week. And if you don't know what a reading sprint is, it's basically a live stream where a creator or multiple creators will read their book for a certain set amount of time. Everybody else in the audience reads their book for a certain set amount of time. And then when the timer goes off, you get to chat, be social, have some conversation. It's really extra fun if you are buddy reading the same book and you're reading to like a specific page. And then once you get there, you can all talk about it. That is a really great motivation for reading. And it's like more of a community aspect. So you can attend my reading sprints or somebody else's, or if you don't really vibe with that as much, which I'm gonna be honest, if I actually want to get reading done, reading sprints do not really work for me, because once I have the social aspect available, I just completely lean into the socializing of it all, which you probably know if you attend my reading sprints. We do tend to chat for quite a big chunk of time. But what I'll do for myself is when I'm having like my own personal reading time, I will do my own little sprints, if that makes sense. Like I will set a timer for an hour, read for an hour, and then I'll let myself, you know, get up and get a snack or check my phone or, you know, do whatever. But I know that if I interrupt that hour of reading time, I will just break the spell and get distracted and not let myself actually be sucked into the world of the book. I think it's a combination of like, you know, little ADHD parts that a lot of us have, and the overstimulation of like the internet and your phone and all of that. I think there's a lot of pieces that Gen Z especially are like really deeply affected by, and that's how I kind of combat that distraction, is by setting those little sprint timers. Now, if you don't like the timing aspect of it, you can set a page goal for yourself, either for the day, for the week, for the month, or for the year. If you just want to have a yearly page goal, for me, annual goals feel like a little overwhelming. I always set my story graph goal in a very attainable number, which for me is 150. So I know I can reach it. But recently, as I'm getting into fantasy, I was really intimidated by the size of these books, and I thought if it took me a really long time to read this really big book, it would put me in a slump. So in order to get around that and not lose any of my momentum, I set a daily page goal for myself while I'm reading the Throne of Glass series to read 200 pages a day. Now, did I stick to that? No. There were some days that I'm like, that is just unattainable. Like, I have work all day long and then I'm going to hang out with my friends. I'm not gonna read today. But on the days that I did pick up my book, I found that if I was hovering around like 120 pages, having that goal in the back of my mind really inspired me to push and just read to the 200 page mark. And in fact, one of the days that I did that, I had read like an extra 50 pages to reach my 200 mark. And then something happened around that point in the book that made me want to read more, and I ended up staying up way too late and finishing the entire entire book. So there's always like a gray area and a middle ground there, but I really think it's helpful to have page goals too. This next tip I think is probably on every single video, article, whatever that tells you how to read more, and that is to utilize audiobooks. For me personally, I had a lot of resistance getting into audiobooks because a lot of what I love about reading was the ritual of it, the sitting down, the grounding to my space, the flipping of the physical pages. But I have discovered that there are some things that I do really enjoy reading on audio. Usually like a fluffy story that's not super dense and easy to follow. It's a lot more comforting for me to listen to an audiobook like that while I'm cooking, cleaning, organizing, getting ready in the morning, doing my skincare at night, all of these things that really add up to hours over the course of your day. It's more comforting for me to have a fluffy romance audiobook or even like a nonfiction book going in my ears as I'm doing that, rather than what I would usually do, which is like play music, which will either distract me or really play on my emotions, or watch YouTube videos, which I don't know, sometimes for me, if it's not like an intentionally cozy YouTube video, it can be a little activating and like, I don't know, distracting. Something about just immersing yourself in the world of a book via audio makes it so easy to get whatever task I'm doing done. Especially, like I said, with like fluffy romances, I can listen to those kind of audiobooks all day long and get so much done around my house. And those hours that you're doing those little tasks that are mindless totally add up. If you're a podcast person, I think it's also a little bit easier to get into audiobooks as well. Just replace a podcast with an audiobook, try it out, see if you like it. It's a great way to get in more pages without sitting down for more physical reading time. My next piece of advice is to read novellas. Read short story collections, read anthologies, and read novellas. Sometimes a novella is the perfect little bite that I need to re-inspire my reading. I can't tell you how many times novellas have gotten me out of reading slumps or helped me to like pick up my pace, whether it's to like meet a page goal for the day or week, or to meet a book goal for the year. I especially love horror novellas that feel like cozy and like I'm just sitting down to watch a little horror movie before I go to bed, which I know probably sounds unhinged and crazy for like non-horror lovers, but that is what I like to do before bed, is like watch a horror movie. And it's a very similar feeling to sit down and read a horror novella because it's done in about 90 minutes. You get the little thrills, but it's nothing that's going to be super weighty or put you into a slump. And I have a ton of recommendation videos on short horror books. I have a specific video that's for horror novellas and books under 200 pages. I definitely want to make an updated version of that video, so comment down below and tell me if you would want to see that, and I will get that out for you soon. My next tip for you is to engage with a bookish service. I find that a lot of the times when I pay for a service, I just feel a lot more invested in taking advantage of it. So for example, I pay for my friend Deja's Patreon, so I feel like I do want to get the most out of it and engage with her book club. So that's an extra book that I'm going to read in the month. And you can also attend the sprints, which you're paying for, so you want to attend. But you can also use Kindle Unlimited. I think that's a service that, for me at least, really is worth all of the money, especially if you have a Kindle. It's $10 a month and you get access to this huge, literally unlimited library. Like nobody could possibly read every single book on Kindle Unlimited. And you get access to books that you probably wouldn't get access to otherwise, like indie published books, novellas, niche horror, niche romance, things like that. Smut. It's all accessible on your Kindle. You don't have to think about looking at your overwhelming shelves and picking something. You don't have to think about going to the library, and you don't have to buy another book. It's completely free once you pay your membership fee. So I think it's really good for mood readers who want a big selection available at all times. And again, you're getting that buy-in feeling of like, oh, I gotta read from something KU this month because I did in fact pay for it. Similar services like Aardvark and Book of the Month give you a book on your subscription every single month, and that was really inspiring for me. When I first subscribed to Book of the Month, I would immediately read my Book of the Month book every single month when I got it, and it was so fun. It was such a fun ritual. Like, I did it with a couple of my friends at the time that we all signed up at the same time, and it was really awesome. And one of my friends, who is not a creator, she still does that. She, as soon as she gets her Book of the Month, she reads it and devours it in one day, and I think it's such a fun little ritual. My next massive tip, and this one is huge. I know you're probably not gonna have a great reaction to it. It's gonna sound like some type of punishment, but for me, it's been so helpful. Look at all the screen time that you're getting in your day and see if you can replace it with reading. Because I personally, throughout the middle of this year, was dissociating on TikTok for over an hour a day, I would probably say. And I know that's like embarrassing to admit, but I would just get sucked into this dissociative hole, especially if I was already feeling like not mentally great that day. And over an hour of my day was lost to just mindless scrolling on TikTok. So I deleted the app and decided to be very intentional that every time I went in my phone to look to click on TikTok, I would just pick up my book. If you're a big Netflix watcher, I think this can work for you as well. Just start replacing some of the shows that you're watching on Netflix with reading time. I have never been a big TV show person. I don't really binge a lot. I literally know zero references, and everyone in my life makes fun of me for it. But I don't watch TV ever, other than RuPaul's Drag Race and MasterChef Junior. Like, those are literally the two shows that I keep up with. Everything else, I don't watch any TV at all. So I'm replacing that time with reading time. So the next time you finish a show that you're binging, instead of scrolling through Netflix and looking for a new one to start, maybe look for a book series to start and use your leisure time at the end of the day for that rather than watching TV. I'm not gonna let go of my horror movie time though. I probably watch at least one horror movie a week. Next up, I actually got this tip from Stephen King, and I think it's really impactful, and that is to always carry a book. Famously, Stephen King would always carry a book with him wherever he goes, and I started doing the same thing, and I noticed what a massive difference it makes. Just having a book on you, accessible at all times, makes it really easy to have a free moment and pick up that book rather than thinking, oh, well, this would be a great time to read while I'm at this coffee shop, but I don't have my book with me. That's why having audiobooks on your phone can also be really helpful, or carrying a Kindle because it's a little bit smaller. You can fit it in your purse. You get a lot more reading hours in that way too. My ninth tip is kind of niche to me, but maybe it would work for some of y'all, I don't know. That is to set your phone to do not disturb. Okay, just do it. Just do it. I promise not having every notification tempting you to pick up your phone and get sucked into the void will make you so much more present and noticing the things in your space a lot more, which the things in my space, as you can see, are a lot of books. So I find when my phone is on do not disturb and I'm not constantly getting that hit of notification, gotta pick it up, gotta look at it, I can actually pay attention to what's around me and pick up a book. Next up, I kind of mentioned a couple times like your momentum when you're reading. For me, that's a big thing. If I don't pick up a book or I like lose my momentum, I could not read for a week or two straight and like not even think about it. So it's really important for me, especially making content for my channel, that I don't lose my reading momentum. Something that helps me with that is choosing my next read immediately after I finish a book. So even if I'm out and I like finish a book at a coffee shop or something, I immediately will look on my story graph and choose what book I'm gonna start next. If I'm reading at home, I will immediately shut my current book and then go to my shelves and pick another one. And that doesn't mean that I'm starting it. Actually, I rarely will pick up a book right after I finish another one, unless I'm like on sprints or something, because I like a little bit of processing time, but I at least choose what my next book is gonna be. So I'm already thinking about it and anticipating it, and I'm not losing any of my momentum. Next up, I would definitely suggest reading with a friend or reading with your partner. I think it's just a lot more inspiring when you have somebody who's like on a journey with you. This isn't always effective. There are some friends that I'm like, okay, we're gonna have a little reading day and go to the pool and just read our books, and we will be in silence for a couple hours. We both just sit there and read. But then there's a couple friends of mine that like we say that we're gonna do that, and we each read 10 pages and then we just rehash the same like 4 traumatic situations that happened to us. So you have to like kind of be aware of the company that you're choosing to read with, and if they're gonna encourage you to actually read or not. My partner doesn't actually love reading. He has some kind of neurodivergence going on. I don't know, he's not diagnosed, but like every time he sits down to read a book, he gets a massive headache, and he's tried so many times. He just like does not have the patience or like mental capacity for it. So we have come up with little routines where I can feel like we're doing something in tandem and we're spending time together, but I'm not necessarily like forcing him to read with me. Sometimes I do read aloud for him, and that's really fun, or sometimes he'll read aloud for me. That doesn't happen a lot, but usually when I'm sick, he will. But whether it's like he's playing his little game and I'm reading next to him, or he's watching a movie that I've already seen a million times, so I don't need to watch it and I can just read while we're doing that. If your partner crafts and you want to read while they're crafting, I just think it's really fun to be doing something in tandem, but not necessarily at the same time with your partner. Another huge inspiring thing for me has been buddy reads and book clubs. I didn't really know that book clubs existed that were cool before I discovered BookTube. Like I kind of heard book club and I was like, okay, a bunch of old suburban white ladies sitting around drinking wine. But no, there are actually some really cool, inspiring book clubs. There are tons and tons and tons of them on the internet. You don't have to find one that's in person and local to you. I think that would be fun. I think you could even start one with like your friend group, and that would be fun. But if that feels intimidating, there are tons of online book clubs. I have one. It's called the Pretty Girl Book Club. If you want to join, it is always linked down below on my Patreon. We read a thriller or horror pick every single month, and then we all discuss it together. And it's very motivating to be like in the community aspect, like people are kind of hyping you up and talking about it throughout the month. But then also like you want to be a part of the discussion, so it inspires you to read it as well. And a lot of girls in my Discord chat will set up buddy reads with each other. Even outside of like our book club read, sometimes 2 people will just pick up a book at the same time. Maybe somebody found it at Half Price Books and somebody else got it from their library, and they're like, hey, we both just got this at the same time. You want to read it together? And it's kind of like a fun little motivating thing to be able to check in every 50 pages or however long and bond over the book that you're reading with somebody else. Reading is a very isolated, introverted activity, so anything that can kind of give you a little bit of social interaction, I feel like is really motivating, and again, helps you like justify your reading if you struggle with that, which I definitely did. My next tip, I'm gonna be totally honest, I don't follow it. But if I did, I think that'd be really cool and I'd probably read more. And that is to start DNFing. DNF stands for do not finish. If you are not liking a book, if it is just dragging you down or it's taking you forever to read, just don't finish it. Just put it down and DNF it. And maybe it can be a temporary DNF and you'll come back to it later when you're in the right mood. But sometimes we just don't click with a book. And I find that if I force myself to finish it, it will probably put me into a slump or just generally take me way too long to read. And then I'm not taking advantage of all that time when I could be reading something that I actually enjoy. DNFing is really hard, especially for us like type A people, that when we stick to something or when we start something, we just want to do it and do it right? Whatever that means. DNFing is another thing that I feel like it's worth diving into the mental and emotional components for yourself and seeing if maybe DNFing would help you read a little bit more. It definitely would be for me, and I will be diving into that on my own as well. My next tip is to create routines and associations with your reading. So if you're like a math-brained person, this could be like an if-then situation, like with an if-then statement. What kind of math is that? Is that geometry? I don't know. My mom is shaking her head as she's watching this, I'm sure. But yeah, I have little if-thens with my reading. Like if I'm at a coffee shop waiting on my coffee, I'm reading my book. If I put my lunch in the air fryer and I'm waiting for it to be ready, I'm reading my book. That is just what I do when I'm waiting on those little daily things. No, I actually don't eat things out of the air fryer every single day. And if I do, it's usually like toast. So I'm not just eating nuggets every single day. Although I do probably eat nuggets like once or twice a week, but it's fine. Another association or routine that I made is reading my Kindle during my nail appointments. I already am just like sitting there with my nails out, so it's very easy to just like tap on my Kindle and turn the page when I need to. Also, she's usually working on one hand at a time, so I can like one-handed tap on my Kindle and read while I'm at all of my nail appointments. If you're somebody who gets your hair dyed or like touched up or whatever, and your color's sitting on your head, you can bring a book to read while that's happening. I always bring a book to the doctor's office, to the OBGYN, to the dentist, whatever. So if I'm sitting in a waiting room, I'm reading my book. And I also went through a big phase of reading audiobooks on the treadmill. That was like a very fun routine that I had for a long time. My chronic pain, activity level, different stuff has made that less attainable for me. But I really, really loved at one point, like waking up super early in the morning, putting on my audiobook and running on the treadmill. That was like the best ever when I could actually run and like my body actually worked. Yeah, that was really good. And kind of going along with that, you can also create a place that inspires reading, or like curate a certain moment around reading that makes you want to read. So obviously for me, my place that inspires reading is my library. I love when it gets dark at night and I just turn on my soft little lamps in here and my twinkle lights, and I can lay among all my squishmallows and just read. Like, I love reading in my library. But I also designed my bedroom that is perfect for reading as well. I have like a little cozy reading nook in there, so I can kind of like change up my scenery. If I get sick of reading in my library, I can go in there. I also have a little reading lamp in my living room for another little reading nook. Like, I've just like designed my apartment to be different spaces for reading. And if there's a place you love to read in and you want to spend more time there, chances are you are going to want to read there. Or you're going to want to scroll TikTok there. So that's what happened to me. So just delete it, okay? And when I say curate like a moment around reading, I mean like kind of like schedule it out, kind of like a repeat of that suggestion, but in a different way. Like, I will schedule out, like, I want to go to this park that I've never been to before and I'm gonna go to read there. Or I'm gonna try out this new coffee shop and I'm gonna go to read there. Just like going to new fun places specifically to read. I love doing this with like our Texas state parks, or like different swimming holes in the summer. I love like picking a vibey summer book and then going to a new swimming hole. So I feel like I'm doing something fun and adventurous. I'm getting out and I'm moving my body, but I'm also specifically saying I'm going to read there. I'm going to get my pages done for the day. I recommend reading from trusted sources. Before I engage with like book review, book recommendation content, I was kind of just reading blindly. And honestly, I read a lot more bad books or books that didn't align with my taste than I do now. I feel like I just have my trusted sources now that I go to when I need a good fire book recommendation, and they never let me down. I have like my lineup of people that if I'm in a slump, I can trust that I can go to their channel, click on their newest video, watch it, and immediately I'm gonna take their suggestion and be out of my slump. Probably my number one favorite recommender for my taste, because really this tip is about like finding the people for your specific taste, but my number one person that I will go to is Cat Chats. I absolutely love her recommendations. They just resonate with me every single time, 10 times out of 10. And I know that I am also probably a trusted source, so I am very happy being that for you. Hopefully I'm a trusted source. I know like all my IRL friends tell me like, you're the reading friend, you're the person that if anyone wants to get into reading, they're gonna come to you for the recommendations. And I love doing that. I think it's good to like find either somebody on the internet, someone that you trust their reviews, or a friend who also reads that you guys can get trusted recommendations from. Next tip is to honor the type of reader that you are. Do not try to put yourself in a box or make some of these things work for you if they just don't work, that's gonna have the opposite effect. And for me, I am a mood reader. You might not be that type of reader, but for me, I have to honor my mood when I'm reading. If I'm just not in the mood for something, I'm not gonna be able to get it done. I'm gonna have to DNF it and move along. And I'm also a seasonal reader, so I know that I'm not gonna wanna read a summery book in the winter, and I'm not gonna wanna read a wintry book in the summer, vice versa. My season has to like fit the vibe and the setting of what I'm reading. So I need to honor that for myself just to kind of make the most of my reading. But you don't have to be a mood reader or a seasonal reader. You can be like a very type A scheduled kind of reader. You can be the type of person who like can't consider your mood, or you'll get way too overwhelmed with all of the options and instead just like choose something and schedule it out, and then that's what you're gonna read for the month. Whatever type of reader you are, just make sure that you're going about your reading in a way that honors that. Part of that for me is I like to switch up the vibe every other book or so that I read, whether that's like switching genres or switching feel of the book. I get really burnt out reading the same thing over and over and over and over. That's why usually with my author taste tests, I will only do like 2 or 3 books, because any more than that, I'm completely burnt out. Similar with my thriller reading vlogs, I can do like max 4 before I start to get burnt out on reading a bunch of thrillers back to back. Okay, y'all, I don't know what happened. There's literally a leaf blower, a like truck, like a work truck idling, and my heater kicked on all at the same time. So I apologize if there's like overwhelming noise in the background of this video, but this is the time that I have to film this video, so this is when it's gonna happen. I get burnt out reading a bunch of stuff back to back, so I like to switch in like thriller, horror, romance, contemporary, and now fantasy, now that I've been getting into fantasy. But beyond genre, I also like to mix up the length of my books. I find that if I read like a bunch of standard 300 and something page novels back to back to back, I can get a little burnout. So it's nice sometimes to put in a longer book and feel more invested, or more often what I do is switch it up with some novellas or short story collections. I also like to switch up the pacing and the type of drive in my books. If I read a ton of really dense character-driven plotless books, sometimes it's fun to have a really plot-driven, mindless thriller in there. I just think switching up the vibe keeps it new, keeps it fresh, and keeps you interested. Next up, I feel like this one is kind of obvious, but maybe not. Get a library card. Please take advantage of your local library. If you have one available to you, get a library card. Even if your library is kind of shitty, just get a library card. I promise you will want to use it. And even if you don't want to go to the library, because honestly, my library, the parking literally sucks. Like the parking garage is always full. And if it's not, it's gonna like charge you $5. Like I cannot with city libraries. Like the Austin Public Library is always packed at all times. I'm not really gonna go there, to be totally real. But they have curbside pickup now thanks to the pandemic, so I do use my library's curbside pickup. And I also always use my library card for audiobooks. I almost never spend money on audiobooks, which I'm the type of person that if I spend money on something that I cannot see, hold, experience, feel in front of me, I feel like it's a scam. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm throwing my money away, lighting it on fire. So I don't really love paying for audiobooks to begin with. Especially when it's the price of like a hardcover book, I would rather buy the physical copy. So I love my library card for accessing bookish services like Libby and Hoopla. Those are the 2 apps that I use, and they're compatible with my library card, and they each allow me to get a certain number of borrows for the month. Usually there's a little bit of a wait for me on Libby, and when I say a little bit of a wait, I mean the Austin girlies have discovered Libby, and I have to wait 6 to 9 weeks to read anything. But Hoopla, I never have to wait, and they have a lot of great stuff just readily available. Especially I've noticed like more indie thrillers and more indie romance is over on Hoopla, just ready for you to borrow for free if you have a library card. So that has definitely helped me read more, and read more like diversely across the different types of ways that you can consume books, the different types of authors and genres that are out there just like recommended to you on those apps. And my last tip for you about how to read more, we're getting back to a little bit of the woo-woo stuff. I'm sorry, I'm a therapist. That is just what I do and where my brain goes. But my last tip is to stop worrying about the importance or the significance of what you are reading or the type of books that you are reading, and just read what you want. I see so many of my friends, especially more like intellectual people in my life, really concerned with reading books that are deeply meaningful, and we forget the power and the meaning that can happen in a fiction book or in the experience of just losing yourself in a very exciting world of a new story. Romance is not fluffy and useless. I have read some of the most emotional, impactful things in romance books. Thrillers and horror are not just like big, scary jump scares that you just move on from. I have read some of the greatest commentary in the thriller and horror genres. You do not have to sentence yourself to reading only literary fiction and nonfiction. If you enjoy that, that is so great. But if you are attached to the image of those kind of genres, it might be worthwhile to break out of it and try something new. Even if you have a little bit of a stigma around branching out and trying new genres that you feel like are beneath you, I really just implore you to do a lot of trying and testing out and exploring with different genres and see what you actually like and want to read, and then just read that. Those are my top 20 tips for how to read more. I hope this is helpful for you guys. Let me know if you have any additional tips down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to check out Dossier down below. And if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you are not already. And don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!